Hello, Potion Masters, Chapter 32. Glass from at least 100 shattered vials crackled under Gordy's feet. His mom's drying rack had collapsed, the herbs reduced to mulch. The swirling fragrance of spilt potions and trampled substances smelled more like a wickedly brewed cup of hot and sour soup. It was tingly and pungent, with undertones of ginger, maple syrup, and just a hint of battery acid. Gordy held a handkerchief to his mouth, but kept his nose uncovered. He needed his ability to decipher in order to know whether or not he was headed into a noxious cloud. So far, despite the cringe-inducing scents, the lab appeared to be safe. Gordy could hear his dad upstairs discussing plans with Bolter and Zelda. The home wards would hold for a bit, but Bolter agreed with Mr. Stitzer that the sooner they devised a clear route out of the neighborhood, the better. Gordy's dad was handling things well for not having much experience in the way of potion making. Max stood on the stairs, retching. "Zip it up already," he demanded, pointing to Baudry's empty body bag. Gordy glanced at his friend. "That's not the problem, I promise you. Just do it, okay?" Gordy rolled his eyes and wove his way through the mess. He knelt down and zipped the plastic container closed. "Smells better already," Max said, sighing in relief. "What are we looking for, anyway?" "Anything worth salvaging," Gordy said. There was so much destruction in the lab. He felt sick for his mother's loss. Years of accumulating ingredients had been destroyed in a 3-minute undead grudge match. The canary bellflower lay in a trampled heap. That plant had been a permanent fixture in the lab as long as Gordy could remember, and now it was gone. He stooped over it and delicately ran his fingers over the flower's withered bloom. Gordy gritted his teeth and swore that he would make Esmeralda Faustus pay for what she had done. And as he stood, staring silently at the canary bellflower, as if holding a candlelight vigil, Gordy's eyes drifted toward the center apothecary table and the bottom left-hand drawer, the one marked volatile, the one Gordy had been forbidden to ever open, the one now slightly ajar, its lock broken. Dusting his hands on his pant leg, Gordy approached the table and held his breath as he slowly opened the drawer. Part of him thought he should wait for his mother to come home. But what if there was no house to come to? What if Esmeralda attacked and destroyed everything else? Maybe, Gordy thought, just maybe, that drawer, contained a weapon. Something to protect the Stitzers against Esmeralda and her Russian thug. Having brewed for several hours now, Gordy assumed he had seen all there was to see in the potion community. He had worked with unstable substances, harvested thorn-riddled plants, dappled with questionable sap, and even milked the fangs of poisonous snakes, all while under the close supervision of his mother. And yet this drawer would be different. He would see items only seasoned elixirists knew about. Gordy half expected something hairy and tentacled to scurry out of the hole, but instead of vials cloaked in secrecy or concoctions of a sinister nature, the drawer was empty, save for a single folded document. "What is that?" Max asked from above Gordy's shoulder. "Looks like a map." It was a map. Gordy could tell that much from unfolding the first crease and seeing the crudely drawn lines etched upon the thick parchment. The paper felt old and oily. A few words had been scribbled on the map, but Gordy recognized one immediately. Chicxulub. The sketched images pinpointed the location of something in Mexico. Adeline had been right. The asteroid crater was of the utmost importance, though it was still cloaked in mystery. Gordy sniffed the paper, closed his eyes, and allowed his skill to take hold. He sensed the ingredients of the parchment. He smelled wood pulp, bleach, rosin, and clay. Gordy could also pick up the ink composition used in forming the boundaries and borders of the hand-drawn map. Propyl alcohol, iron, and cellulose dye. But Gordy detected something else. Another ink had been used, one mixed with the toxic saliva from a blue-ringed octopus in order to write hidden messages. Gordy's mind raced as he stood and cleared an area on top of the apothecary table. He smoothed out the map and then scanned the floor in search of what he needed. The lab was such a mess. Gordy doubted he'd be able to find anything, but luckily for him, not all the vials had been crushed. Gordy picked his way through broken glass and pieces of cork until he found a stoppered bottle of barberry fig needles and a Tupperware container of Hawkeyes. Gordy combined the two in a pewter cauldron and ignited a Bunsen burner beneath it. I'm guessing you're, Max started to say, but Gordy cut him off. This potion needs complete silence, Gordy said, his tone serious. No talking, please. Max didn't object, and Gordy continued with his mixing. Within a few seconds, the burner had reached the optimal temperature, and Gordy had the final ingredient, a ripped corner of the map, into the cauldron. He then took a paintbrush and applied copious amounts of the mixture all over the parchment. I knew it, Gordy said, his excitement growing as the hidden message appeared across the paper. There were 2 paragraphs separated by a pair of reddish thumbprints pressed beneath the first block of print. Gordy held the paper, close to the Bunsen burner for light and read the cursive script. For the heinous crimes committed against the potion community and for his creation of the Eternity Elixir, we, Wanda Rook Stitzer and Priscilla Isring Rook, on this, the 22nd day of October, do hereby banish our father, Meserix Oleander Rook, the self-proclaimed scourge of nations, to Mount Farrell, Sermersuk, Greenland. We seal this banishment with our blood, thus rendering his abilities of concocting, brewing, and filtering potions void of substance. In the forbidden zone, Meserix shall live out his banishment until the end of his days. What? Gordy whispered as he tried to process what he had just read. His grandpa was a potion master? He had never heard the name Meserix before, but the document had been written by either Gordy's mother or his Aunt Pris, and they named Meserix as their father. Gordy lowered the paper and swallowed. He's not dead? Who's not dead? Max asked. My grandfather. Gordy gazed in the direction of the fireplace, his eyes unfocused. Not only had his grandpa not died in a tragic farming accident, but he was still alive, and judging by what his mother had written, a dangerous criminal as well. An elixirist gone bad. Why hadn't she told him? Gordy recalled the black and white photograph of his grandpa Rook, the one he kept in his closet. Meserix, Gordy whispered, glancing back down at the document. He assumed the red thumbprints belonged to his mom and Aunt Pris. Hey, Gordy shouted as Max snatched the paper from his fingers. You'll rip it. I'm not going to rip it, but I can just stand here while you zone out, Max said. Give it back to me. There is more to the message. Max cleared his throat and read from the paper. The Eternity Elixir is impossible to destroy by any means we possess. As far as we know, it is the only self-replicating potion in existence. He scrunched his nose. Self-replicating? Let me read it, please. Gordy calmly held out his hand, and Max gave him the paper. Narrowing his eyes in concentration, Gordy finished reading the words his mother had written 12 years ago. We don't know what devilish means our father used to create the Eternity Elixir, but every attempt at destroying it has failed. Fire, explosives, volatile substances. The potion always returns to its previous form and always in its original vial. Something this dangerous cannot be allowed to fall into the wrong hands, and we cannot trust everyone among the BREW elite. The Chicxulub crater will protect it from even the most skilled ciphers. We pray that our hiding place goes unnoticed until we discover how to properly rid the world of this abomination. Well, Max asked eagerly, what did it say? Gordy set the paper back onto the counter and stared at Max, his mouth dropping open slightly. But he didn't answer. Instead, he hurriedly refolded the paper, crammed it back in the drawer, and raced for the stairs. End of chapter 32.